Hi guys, it's Abby.
And Lizzie, and today we are going to talk about oppression.
Obviously, topics like oppression are really hard to talk about, and people don't like to hear about it, but talk about it is important.
Talk about it is important. So we're going to try our best and make this fun and educational.
To start off, let's talk about the different types of oppression. There's so many different types of oppression, but today we're going to specify. The types of oppression we're going to be talking about are racism and homophobia.
So addressing the first mentioned is racism, and racism has been around for so long, unfortunately, obviously. And one example is Othello, which is a play that was written by Shakespeare.
Othello is about, Othello, a black army general who secretly gets married to his new wife, Desdemona, and not a lot of people like it. And so you have this guy named Iago, and he goes around and starts spreading rumors and turns people against each other, and it eventually ends up with bad things happening, basically. In the end of the play, he fails miserably, Iago does, and most of his friends end up dying. So his genius plan was all for nothing.
So you can see in the beginning of Othello that he's outcasted despite his high rank in the army. And throughout the entire play, there are no other black characters. He's the only one. And he's subsequently the most disliked character throughout the entire play. And in the end of Othello, spoiler alert, he is made out to be a terrible person and he kills his wife. He kills her after Iago convinces him that Desdemona was cheating on him.
Not only is Othello a black man in the play, but traditionally in theaters, he's always played by a white man in blackface, which it's not that good. Not that good.
Now, this goes to show for how long racial oppression has gone on, like in Shakespeare times, which was so long ago. And oppression has always been a thing. So there will always be someone who excludes the minority, but the question is, what can we do to include everyone that we can and treat them equally? And as Nathaniel Branden said, the first step towards change is awareness, and the second step is acceptance. So the first thing we should do is make you all aware of the oppression rooted in society.
People in groups such as MLK, W.E.B. Du Bois, and the Black Panthers have been attempting to solve, because it's really hard to do that, solve racism for centuries. And although it has made a huge development in our society today, people of different ethnicities still continue to struggle every single day.
Similar to Othello being published in the early 1600s, W.E.B. Du Bois was the first black man to receive a PhD from Harvard, and that was a big deal. And he later became the director of the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, where he wrote a journal about his experiences as a black man.
One of Du Bois' most famous writings was his disagreement with Booker T. Washington, who was another black activist who basically gave a speech saying, we need to roll with the punches. And Du Bois didn't agree with that, and he said that we shouldn't be docile and that we should fight and stand up for our rights and who we are.
Du Bois decided to give a speech saying basically stand up to your oppressors and we can make it through, but instead of peace or violence, he basically kind of went with more of a political approach, and he tried to get it from the inside out, and he tried to educate everyone about oppression and stuff like that. And then a group named the Black Panthers formed in hopes of protecting African Americans against their oppressors. And this group would even carry around guns to intimidate white cops.
Although these two groups believed in the more violent ways of solving these issues, there are also other people who believed in peaceful ways of solving these issues, such as probably the most famous or well-known black activist, Martin Luther King. King believed in peaceful protests that showed the world and humanity that humanity doesn't have to grow through huge fights, but we can get along together for a common goal, and we can change the world.
Sadly, the night after one of his speeches, King was assassinated, but his dreams lived on through his wife, and peaceful protest humanity began to utilize. Even more recently, in 2020, America saw a rise in BLM protests, which swayed in peaceful versus violent.
As you can see, our world has been flawed for hundreds of years. Sadly, racism is still present in everyday lives, and our society deals with oppression by speaking in protest, creative writings, and forms of art.
Another group that has faced oppression for years is the LGBTQ community, which is our next topic of discussion.
The LGBTQ plus community stands for, well, it's in the name. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans.
This community has faced controversy and oppression for years. An example of someone who is LGBTQ is Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of Queen. At the time, being a part of this community was extremely controversial and frowned upon, but that didn't make him less of a person. He was the same as you and I, but faced backlash because of him loving someone.
Although never discussing his private life openly, Freddie Mercury dated men and women in public. No one in the band cared when they saw him with his love interest, because they all saw him as a friend, while other friends were disgusted and stopped listening to the band's music altogether.
We could look at individuals all day, but there have been bigger forms of oppression than fans not listening to artists. In the 1960s, police stormed a gay club in New York, which is now known as the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Uprising took place over 6 days and is the first time in history that police raided an LGBTQ plus bar.
At the time, it was illegal for homosexual relationships, especially in New York, where the Stonewall Riots happened. But this specific bar, the reason why they were able to raid it was because they had liquor license, which made it an easy target. And by the end of the 6 days, 14 people were arrested and many more were injured.
Since then, the laws regarding gay marriage have passed, but are still very controversial.
From these examples, you can tell that oppression sadly has been around for hundreds of years. So what can we do? Believe it or not, you can't solve oppression on your own, but if one person has an idea that can spark motivation, that says everything.
As an example, Abby and I are making this video to spread awareness of how horrible oppression is for groups, communities, and individuals. You can't generalize an entire group of people because everyone is unique in their own way. Like, just because someone is a certain race or culture or ethnicity doesn't make them automatically a bad person or a good person. I mean, it depends on how they were raised and what kind of person they are that defines how they will treat others. And the biggest problem in society today is how we treat each other, and I think the best way to handle that is to treat everyone equally, even the people who are different or rude, etc., because society isn't going to progress if we don't either. That being said, we think the best response to oppression would be peaceful protests, as we are doing, spreading kindness, and standing up for others.
But once again, we can't do this on our own. So if you're seeing this, do what's right and go stand up for people. At the end of the day, we're all people who equally deserve a chance at living our life and having what we want to do with the time we have. So get out there.
Go compliment some people and be a good person. Don't oppress people because that is not lit in turn. Bye, guys!
Bye-bye!